every build hack you need to know for your Minecraft worlds. This is sugarcane, and this is dried out sugarcane. Or, it sure looks that way. Because as Ms. Afrix points out, by just placing down some mangrove roots like this, they work surprisingly well as dead sugarcane stalks. And so if you're trying to add in some more world building to that part of your base, this is a plenty good option, and it gives you use to mangrove roots. Which, let's be honest, by themselves, weren't exactly making the cut. They really need a story to make them look good like this. Armor stands aren't just good for showing off our armor, but also for showing off our items. And here, this user took a page out of Zombie Cleo's book on Hermitcraft, where you can use the armor stand data pack from something like Vanilla Tweaks to use the armor stands as item frames. And then by combining that with hanging signs like this, we can get a unique design to show off our rockets and wheat for sale. And while it does get a little hard to format the text when you're trying to make the sign look just right, this is definitely a lot more eye-grabbing than just having text alone, so I think you make up for that shortcoming. And personally, I see this as an evolution of using item frames and signs that we've shown off in the past build hacks video. Now we're not just limited to blocks, we can use any item that we want here. And angle it too, it looks really cool. With a couple of blast furnaces, we're able to tuck this into our kitchen and take after this user to make our very own stovetop and oven design. As they show off in their video, the way to make this is to put item frames on top of the blast furnaces, and then by adding in iron trap doors, we can then cover that up with a black banner that has the light gray fess and bordure patterns. And while that already looks great if you want to build that just in survival, if you want to go one step further in creative mode, then by using the command on screen to get yourself the invisible item tag item frame, you can add a couple of iron bars on top, and that gives you the grill for the stovetop, which I think is just awesome, and the blast furnaces are still useful for their regular function, making it a lot more fitting if you actually want to build this inside of your house. In the past, we've shown off many different ways to make yourself a keyboard inside of your desk setup, but what user Shade Freeze has here on Reddit is quite possibly my favorite addition that I've seen yet. Now here, we're using an armor stand to give ourselves the chainmail helmet as the keyboard, which I'll add on if you enchant that chainmail helmet, then you've got yourself an RGB keyboard as well. And then with a button over here for a mouse, the real cherry on top for this is adding in custom map art that allows us to have a high quality texture of your desktop's wallpaper. I mean, come on, they've even got unread notifications for Discord. This is one-to-one in more ways than we like to admit. But quite possibly my favorite part of this whole post is the fact that they list out the specs down in the comments for it. Clearly someone who's dedicated to attention to detail. I love it. Minecraft doesn't have much in the way of hospitals. I mean, why would you need to when Steve can just eat a steak and get right back up to full health? But even if it did have some kind of healthcare system, I would hope that it looks safer than this. Although that's not to say what this user built here is anything short of special. Because with a couple of iron trap doors laid across like this, with some anvils to boot for the edges, we can add in a skeleton skull and an invisible item frame with a bone in it to give ourselves the perfect evil autopsy table to put inside of a scary build. And if you want to add a splash of color, obviously redstone works a little too well as something that came off of the table. And if you wanted to use an actual armor stand statue, then you could add a living body on top of this for an actual autopsy. And if someone wanted to make an Operation style minigame inside of Minecraft, I think this would be a perfect setup for it. As we all know, it's unfortunately impossible to tie leads between fences themselves. So, how does this work? Well, the real secret that's going on here is that the leads are tied to animals, but they're just attached to rabbits that were hiding off to this side of the walls. And so if you have a narrow enough corridor, you can thread along these hanging lanterns and not have to worry about your alleyway being distracted by a couple of rabbits. And honestly, seeing how good this looks, it really does make me disappointed that we're not able to have this just as a base feature in the game. But with the clever solution that Benji Banana shows off here, we can get something special and make it happen inside of vanilla. If you take a campfire and extinguish it, then we could use that middle space in between the two logs on top to align with some armor stands and get ourselves a perfect looking rack of potions like we can see here. And this is the kind of detail that I could never understand how people find out in the first place. Like if you asked me to guess how big the space was on the campfire, I wouldn't have been able to guess that it becomes the exact same size as when an armor stand holds a bottle. But sure enough, here it looks perfect. And honestly, the only strike against this is that it's so small of a detail that it might go unnoticed if you put it inside of your build. But hey, if you go through the effort of making this, it would be a great conversation starter for your brewery. Just saying. Glowberries don't get a lot of love up here on the surface, but as we can see from this example, that's definitely our mistake. Since by going through the effort to add the glowing berries here to hang underneath moss blocks, that and azalea leaves blend together perfectly to give ourselves a really pretty drooping tree outside of your build. And then even using tough blocks for some kind of acacia looking bark on the tree, it's so impressive to see a build that fits so perfectly up here on the overworld when all of the blocks for it come from underground. But if you do build this, keep in mind that a big reason why they're using moss blocks inside of this is that you can't hang glowing berries off of leaves. But when it blends well enough like this, I don't think that's much of a detriment. As user MK the Maniac points out, there's really not a lot of bed designs that only use one bed. And so before you have that person who's willing to put their bed next to yours, I think using a solution like this is not going to make you feel lonely. Since by having a couple of campfires and then extinguishing them like this, you can make a really cool looking bed frame to house your bed inside. And because the campfires are lower than the bed's model, it really makes the top of the bed look like sheets placed here. And then with hanging signs for the headboard, you can get a bed design that I'd be happy to respawn at. And if you ever get cold at night, bring yourself a flint and steel and ignite all those campfires around you. It won't be as nice to wake up to, but at least you won't sleep with your feet cold. Building pianos in Minecraft is nothing new to build hacks. But what I love about this example by Theo Tries is that we have a piano that's not actually a grand piano, and instead it looks a lot more like something you'd actually have inside of your world. And here, by using a smaller size and the same armor stands to get the dragon heads to poke out through the carpet, we can then use some more armor stands to give ourselves the feet pedals that go underneath our piano. I mean, even the extra detail here where you can lift up the spruce trapdoor and see the strings of the loom as the strings of the piano is particularly cool. So while figuring out the armor stands to build this might be a little tough, with results like this, it's hard to say that it doesn't look amazing. To give our builds a gothic flair, then the best way to do that is to take after user Sleep Deep 305 and start with a base of natural blocks that get smaller and smaller as they go up to the top of the spire, and then finally we can go around the outside of the pillar and add on some dead coral fans in a ring like so to give spikes on top of the build. And as they also point out, this entire build is survival friendly as well. So if you accidentally let your coral reef dry out a little bit too much, then there's more of a use for those dead coral fans than just another TNT duplication machine. In the past, we've shown off a cheap hack to make yourself a sleeping bag inside of your world. And while that example using beds and slabs is functional, I think as we can see from Theo again here, is that if you're willing to switch out that function for form, you can get a much better looking sleeping bag. And here, by using a whole bunch of armor stands aligned just right, you can have one of them hold a tripwire hook like so, and then have the remaining 9 hold up a smooth stone slab in such a way where it peeks through the top of the carpet, giving us the zipper. And I particularly love using the leather cap here to work as the pillow of the sleeping bag. It all just works together so nicely that I don't even care if I can't respawn here. Just being able to look at it once and appreciate it, that's good enough for me. With a pot and an azalea of your choice, flowering or regular, you'll notice that when you put 4 candles on top of it, they align just perfectly on top of the bush. And now we've got ourselves a unique night light that isn't gonna catch fire anytime soon next to your bed. And if you want to add even more detail just to the plant itself, then don't light the candles at all, make them magenta, and it'll look like more plants are growing out of that flowering azalea. Really, the choice is up to you. How much use do bells get inside of your world? I mean, really, after you ring that bell to get notified about all future uploads, and thank you, by the way, there's not much of a use for it inside of your world. I mean, sure, we're able to use them to build this system that can perfectly align a boat on an ice highway, but let's be honest, that's very situational. So if you instead want to use them as a build hack outside of your village, then what user Trivia Man has here works particularly well. Starting with a composter that we fill up so then it looks like the dirt of a potted plant, then we can add in some fences for the bark of the tree, complete it with some leaves and different moss blocks, and finally take those bells that we weren't using before and hang them from the leaves to have ourselves a lemon tree. I mean, they're pretty noisy lemons, but for a creative way to use an underappreciated block, I think this is a great one to do. Since glass blocks are transparent by nature, not with just how they look, but how they're coated, we're able to put entities like armor stands inside of the block. And because of that, we can take after what JSY Panther did here and have ourselves a beautiful display case to show off your items. Just simply align your armor stand like so, and then you can show off basically anything you want inside of here, whether that's a dragon egg, or even just the first wooden pickaxe you built inside of your world. But unfortunately, this is only survival friendly if you're using it with something like the Armor Statues data pack. But as someone who would recommend using that data pack in any world that you use anyway, I think then it's all the more reason to try this inside of your world. Minecraft doesn't have a lot of birds, and the ones that we do don't live in trees. But when you see this build hack, you'd think that we had something actually added to the base game. It looks that good. And what we have here is a banner pattern that's aligned just right, so that the black circle of the banner pattern actually looks like a hole inside of the tree bark. And then the added detail to have a custom player head that looks like a log that's sticking out of the tree, I think works just great. I mean, with the way that banner patterns work anyway, they really don't have much of a hitbox to speak of. So you can overlap things like this, and it works just fine. I mean, sure, from the wrong angle, it's gonna look the hole in the tree is swaying, kind of giving away your facade. But as long as you can keep all your viewers to the right side, then this is an illusion that's sure to sell itself perfectly inside of your next build. With an end rod and a gold pressure plate on top, we've got all that we need to make ourselves a drum kit inside of Minecraft. And then at that point, you can just design the drum kit however you want. Add in a few more hi-hats and then add in a bass drum here with the bone block. And at that point, that alone is already looking pretty good. But they go one step further with a couple of armor stands that are added in to give ourselves a stool, as well as a couple of skulls for some of the lower parts of the drum. And honestly, using skulls here probably isn't that bad. Face them the other way, and now you got yourself a kit that's ready for a heavy metal concert. Although I guess with the gold, it was already pretty much heavy metal anyway. In a past video, we showed off build hacks to make your builds look like Barbie, and now we're gonna be showing off a build hack that goes more to the Heimer part of the Barbenheimer meme. Since here, by mixing together a hopper, a terracotta block, a pot, and then another hopper on top, you'll notice that gives us the right amount of tapering to look perfect for an atom bomb design. And while that alone already looks great, what I love that Bow Flap did here is adding in a dead grass texture as well as a couple of dead bushes off to the side. At that point, this biome really starts to look radioactive. But with no TNT to speak of, this is actually one of the least destructive things we can build in Minecraft. So I'll let you choose however much firepower you want to add inside of this to actually make it usable inside of your world. All the skulk blocks that you find down in the deep dark blend particularly well together. So if you're willing to risk it and go down to an ancient city to steal yourself a couple of these with a silk touch hoe, you would notice that by placing a skulk catalyst with a skulk block on top, and then finally topping that off with a skulk shrieker, we aren't gonna have to worry about it summoning anything inside of your world, since placed down skulk shriekers don't summon the warden, and we'll also be getting a particularly cool mold for a skulk wall. And if you want to go one step further, take after what Snoo Walruses did here, and start off with skulk sensors, skulk blocks, right down to skulk catalyst, and give yourself a full wall of skulk blocks that has trims on both sides. And at that point, we go from the horrors of the depth to looking like you have the stars projected inside of your bedroom, which is a lot more charming. If the sounds of skulk sensors don't keep you awake, that is. If we're being honest, how often does a blank transparent map get used in your world? I mean, at that point, can you even call it a map? It really just seems like a blank piece of paper. But as we can see from this post, there actually is quite the use for it. Since by placing that transparent map inside of an item frame like this, that'll broaden the item frame texture to fill up more of the block, but you won't see anything inside of it. And at that point, we not only have a build hack in and of itself, but we also have the building blocks for a whole bunch more. Just in the other examples for this post, we can use this to make on and off lamps with the glowing and regular item frame variants. Or combine it with signs and line the outside of our potted plants like this to have great looking planters inside of your build. And if you want to use pressure plates inside of your dining hall, then by lining it like this, we now have borders to those plates to make them look a lot more like plates instead of redstone. And if you're wondering the way to get a transparent map, they also give us the details in the comments. All you gotta do is fly out to the ends void, and then place a layer of glass down at the Y level 2. At that point, that's all the blocks that you need to register it, and our map will still be transparent, even in survival. If I'm being honest, the pitcher plants that we got inside of Minecraft 1.20 are pretty hard for me to justify using in most builds. I mean, most of the time I'm not trying to have it look like Avatar inside of my world, let's just say it like that. But seeing this example by Who Mike Hidden, where we use the set block command to give us the top of the pitcher plant on top of what we're using here of a bamboo stalk, then it blends together a lot nicer to look like some kind of vibrant plant that grows on your riverside. And while it's unfortunate that this uses commands to make it work, the fact that it actually gives us a use to one of the few features that was added in with the sniffer makes me like it a lot more. Though with the Dinnerbone name tag, we can take a breeze, flip it upside down, and then use its particle trail to give an extra amount of detail to any kind of thing that we want up here on the surface. So in this example, we have a candle that's outlined by the breeze's wind effect to give ourselves a magic candle inside of your build. And I love how perfectly it just fits in the center of this, right? I mean, getting a breeze to stand still at all sounds tough enough, but if you're able to go through the effort of doing that, this example proves that it's more than worth it. With the new 1.21 update, we think of the crafter block as redstone, but probably not as a door. But after seeing this example, I'm inclined to believe otherwise, since the fact that the crafter block is directional means that we're able to rotate it in different ways to get really unique designs. And this particular one of having the crafter block face out this way with the grid on top makes it look like an industrial door that opens up into some evil facility. I love it. And especially because we can power the crafters and add more details to this, it could get pretty intense if you wanted to. I mean, there's obviously the issue of it's not actually going to work as a door. We're not able to move container blocks unless we're on Bedrock Edition, but even just as a detail here, it looks pretty well. Now, when we talk about making a dirt house in Minecraft, you're usually picturing your first night, something that's just meant to get you by so that you don't die to the creepers and zombies outside. But as the years have gone by and Mojang's added new dirt blocks into updates, we actually see that it could be useful to use inside of your roof. And now, by using something like moss and rooted dirt inside of your roof, we get a kind of overgrown look to your build. And considering that this can happen with moss to actual rooftops in the real world, I mean, then it's just realistic. And mixing it together with deep slate in this house example is really nice. The greens of the moss really break up the kind of grays that we got going on here. Just don't expect it to give you much blast protection. I mean, after all, it is a roof made out of dirt. What did you expect? Now, one of the things you use to make the mace is the heavy core, which is a unique crafting item because we're able to place it down like a player head in our world. But the breeze rod, not as much. Or at least it wouldn't be unless we did something like this. Since by having a light blue stained glass right underneath our heavy core, it just looks like we placed our mace right down in the world. A simple build hack, but one that fits really well for the new update. While we still don't have any copper fence blocks to play around with, what we do have, as Sad Milkman shows off, is the ability to set back our copper grates like this, and then when placed in such a way, it looks as if we have copper fence that's linking between these copper pillars. And as long as you make sure that people only see it from this angle, then you should be good. You can even add in some copper lightning rods on top of this, and ensure that if you ever get a lightning storm, at least all your copper's not gonna oxidize. The cauldron's an awkward block. I think basically the channel at this point serves as a resume for why not to hire the cauldron at this point. But while it might not always be good for its actual uses, the way that user Theo tries put it together in this post is something funny at least. Adding together a wither skeleton skull and a couple of trapdoors flipped up like this, we've effectively got ourselves a flying animal in the skies. Is it a pretty animal? Not necessarily. I think its cuteness is more in its quirkiness. But does it give us a use for our cauldron? Also true. And for that, I'm always grateful. Using endstone in a build is already a bold move. I mean, let's face it, there's some things that are better left in the end. But this user shows us that there's actually a pretty good reason for Mojang added in the brick versions of these blocks. And that by using it together with green glazed terracotta, you can get a really nice green looking building for your skyline. Now, admittedly, it is going to take a while if you want to get all these blocks in survival. I don't know many people who like to spend their time mining for endstone, but when the results can look like this, I'd reconsider if I had the stuff on hand, which is way more than I was doing otherwise. Really, I would have just thrown this off the cliff into the void, so I think this is a better fit for it. The common build hack in the past was using all of these trapdoors to make something out of a trap to catch rabbits inside of. And today we'll see that by switching out those spruce trapdoors for ones of the copper variety, we no longer have a trap, we instead have a crate for our pets. And come on, with all the new wolves that we've gotten in the Armored Paws update, I think they also need something new to hang out in. Just also make sure that you sit them down inside of the crate. Otherwise, if they're not properly crate trained, they're just gonna teleport out like wolves do. Though I can't say I blame them. I also don't like to be trapped in small spaces. You know those random water pits and puddles that tend to generate inside of your plains biome? Yeah, when you zoom out, they're not exactly the prettiest. Looks more like zits on a face. So to clean you up and look better before prom night, the user Spaceboy Art has the right idea of instead flattening those out and making one giant lake to instead hold all of the water. And I have to agree with what they said in the comments here. The idea of the plains is that it's supposed to be a place for all your big projects. So having these little hurdles and obstacles can really be a pain. And so instead, moving it all into one centralized area for a lake, now you've got a water feature to build around, and the rest of the space to actually use. Showing what's ugly in small doses actually looks quite nice if you mix it all together. Netherbrick fences and regular fences do not connect, which most of the time could seem annoying, but here it actually ends up being quite useful. Since, as this user was to show off, by alternating between dark oak fences and netherbrick fences like so, we're essentially creating larger fence gates than we ever thought were possible inside of vanilla Minecraft, which is a nice touch when the alternative to get a method like this would be to use a debug stick and individually toggle off all of these fences. I'd much rather just craft some netherbrick and do it this way. And then next to granite and bricks, it actually pairs quite nicely. And after all, they're all warm tones, so when you alternate it just right, it's something that shows that you're ugly alone, but when you band together, you might just have something going on for yourself. Unfortunately, it's impossible for us to stack our heavy cores on top of one another. But while that seems like it would be a downside, when you look at a pattern like this, it might make you want to reconsider. Since by alternating between a heavy core, a wall, and another heavy core on top, we can take after this zigzag pattern and add ourselves a kind of raindrop effect inside of your walls. And using this to texture the outside of a building would look particularly cool. Just also costs a whole lot of heavy cores, so maybe save this one for the creative world. Wither skeleton skulls are usually just good for one thing, spawning the wither. But if you manage to have good luck with looting, you could actually use these for a nice build hack if you wanted to. See, by angling these just right, we can follow this user's lead and have them be cannonballs inside of your pirate ship. And I think that looks quite nice. A little destructive maybe, especially if someone happens to break them and bring along some soul soil. But as long as you got the right pirate ship to be storing all these, and you keep your crew in line, I think these will work pretty well in your next 7 seas. Respawn anchors have such a dark texture that it might be easy to forget that they're actually a light source. But as this post shows off, if you were to tuck one of these respawn anchors into a ceiling made of crying obsidian, then sure enough, we've got ourselves a hidden light source in your ceiling. Just make sure that none none of your friends are coming through and adding too many glowstone inside. Or if they are, then just build this inside of the nether where it's not gonna explode. We don't need your ceiling lights trying to kill you. Here, instead of just taking one ugly block and making it pretty, this user basically did what's the equivalent of making a stew. Take all the cheaper cuts of meat, mix it together, and then, as a sum of its parts, you get something a lot more special. And so, while stripped jungle log and drip stone and raw iron might not look great by themselves, add it into a palette like this, it really sticks out. And the same can be said for all the other blocks that they have in the 4 different quadrants here. I mean, just take any of these for inspiration, and you could have something pretty special for your next build. Though, with the amount of raw ore blocks that they're using here, you're also gonna have something pretty expensive. Look out for that while you're doing this. In my personal opinion, Cyberpunk is one of those build styles that's really hard to pull off, but once you do, it looks just fantastic. And what I personally love to see is when people use the paintings as some form of graffiti on the sides of their walls. And while this was originally built before the new paintings were even teased for Minecraft, I think with all the new ones that we got to play around with, our Cyberpunk builds just got a lot more of a story to tell. And I think covering up parts of the paintings too can make it look even like a new painting inside of your world. I mean, look at this example in the original post where the end rods are crossing over this figure in the painting. Even though I'm familiar with the original, and I have been for years, if I didn't look too closely, I'd think it was something entirely new. And that's the kind of ingenuity I always love to see with every new update. Old Netherrack is a texture that's famous for being one of the ugliest that's ever graced the game. Or disgraced the game? I don't know. It's not a pretty sight. And while we've talked about that our fair share, I mean, literally look at this thumbnail and see that we've talked about it. I think what this user's done here is actually put the old Netherrack texture into good use. Which I know is a lot for me to say, but what Iron Lining does here by using it as old roof tiling, I think is particularly pretty. And now all the busyness of the texture just looks like actual different layers of depth to the tiling that's done in the roof. And it really doesn't look the same if you try this again with new textures. So if you're stuck to playing in older versions that are stuck with this texture, then this could be a solution for you. I actually think that granite could do better for itself than its middle child status suggests. And if you look at examples where it's mixed in with spruce logs and wood, the reddish hues of the granite actually make it work really nice as a complementary stone block. And so if you use it lower down in your builds and use it as a foundation, I think you get something really quality here. And what's even more impressive is that this isn't the polished version of the block at all. It's just regular granite. Still looks great. I think that's worth some props. Ever since 1.21, tough blocks are gonna get a lot more love in the building community. And when they look like this, I say rightfully so. And I especially love this example that Hey Joe Hey built, where we can almost blend together the textures of the different tough blocks, and using that make a gradient into our pillars. I mean, if you ask me, this is the best advertisement for the stone cutter I've seen. And so if you're already gonna get plenty of these blocks if you go and excavate through your local trial chamber, this is maybe the easiest way to start using it inside of your building world. And speaking as someone who loves to use dark gray inside of my palette, I plan to tuck these anywhere that I can. But taking after what Falcon Punch 100 did in this post, using the stairs and other slabs to make it look as if they're broken pillars inside of an ancient temple, that's just too good to pass up on. When you think of one of your Minecraft builds catching on fire, you're usually thinking of the end of the world. I mean, that's all of your work literally going up in smoke. But here, that's the point, and it is your hard work. And I think the idea of using dead coral and dead bushes inside of the fire to trail off into a gradient for the smoke is a really clever touch. And then using more vibrant regular coral as it gets lower and lower, I mean, this is just beautiful. Forget having a particle system in Minecraft. This user literally built it, and it looks better than what I could dream of. And you don't have to worry about disabling fire tick for this one, so there's a couple of benefits to that. Oh, there's definitely some pretty variations of basalt. The regular block by itself leaves something to be desired. I mean, for one, it reminds you of the basalt deltas, and those are not a fun biome to be in by any means. But as this user shows off, by mixing together the directionality of the block, we can actually get some quite pretty results to mix into your paths. Or if you want to take it another step, if you look closely, you can see that this actually matches the texture of an oak log pretty well. Place two of these vertically with some cobblestone for the leaves, and you basically got a charred tree. That looks pretty cool on the nether if you ask me. And it's not gonna burn down to any ghasts. For a long time, players have complained about the ugly red band that goes around a bale of hay. And we're guilty of that ourselves. That's why in our illegal build hacks video, we opted for having a naked version in the block and thatch. It just looks a lot nicer. Except in this scenario, I think it's actually a benefit. Since tucking it into the bedspread as we see in this example, then it just adds a pattern onto what we have on our bed. Plus the different lines of wheat make it look like folds in the fabric. I think that's really clever. And hey, straw's using barns too, so I guess that's a safe thing for any bedwetters. Now that we've got all these new paintings to play around with, it can be easy to forget our old ones. But I'd ask you to not do that just yet, since by just putting some of these paintings side by side, you can notice that these blend particularly well together. And I for one love the idea of just having our paintings slowly branch out with every new one that they add. I mean, clearly gradients in Minecraft building are already great, so having the option to do this with the paintings in game, that's particularly special in my eyes. But also make sure that you have a good enough space in your build to be able to try this out, because having 6 blocks of horizontal space to show this off, that's asking quite a bit in Minecraft economics. But if you got a mega base, this will fit in just perfectly. Moss and cobblestone can look fine in certain situations, but when you see it by itself, it really just looks ugly. But here, I think what Mega Miner DL did in this example was really fantastic, since by itself, it does stand out. I mean, it's camouflage that's not being camouflaged. And the idea of using this with your vehicles to have them stand out when they need to and then disappear when they're supposed to, that's a really clever way to use this block. It also gives a use to all the different stair and slab variants that we have for these as well, because if I'm being honest, I've never found a use for them otherwise. Maybe in a path, but to actually be able to build something and have it look real and man-made, that's impressive. Plus this picture they took of it is just really nice on the subreddit. Nothing but flowers to give to this. Nice work. Dripstone spikes are pretty cool, but the actual dripstone block, it's not a looker. It's a very intense, harsh texture, but there are some colors we can actually mix pretty well together. For example, if you're not a fan of the way that weathered copper actually looks, then mixing the two together, you get something that actually starts to complement. Now, is everyone gonna find this pretty? No. The comments on the original post prove as much. But is it a lot better than what we started from? Absolutely. And I think that's a good start, especially because now we can show it off to other builders like you, and I know you'll go do something special with it. The copper golem was never added to Minecraft, and while that's definitely an unfortunate circumstance, if you look at a build like this, you'd think that it was added in the most recent update. Since here we've got a great design for a dismantled copper golem. And while I think it looks great to use a carved pumpkin and some roots underneath it like this example, the option to use a chain underneath and then the copper bulb up top also looks particularly good in my opinion. The end portal frames always seem to look out of place compared to the rest of the end portal texture, and definitely compared to the rest of the stronghold. And while I guess part of that is intentional, what user RoPractical1304 did in this post is make something that both makes sense and looks a whole lot better. And here, by just simply incorporating the end portal texture inside of an actual ender pearl design, we get something for your portal room that really looks like it could fit in at any point of your Minecraft journey. Whether you're first going to the end, or you're going for the 1000th time to visit your Enderman farm. Though honestly, building this later might be a good idea, because the way that they built this, they used diamond blocks to actually pull this off. And yeah, something about using 27 diamonds to get this design, don't get me wrong, it looks great, but if they weren't there, would anyone notice? I have no clue. Maybe that's a little easier to build if you're in creative mode, just saying. A dirt house is clowned on for being one of the ugliest things that you can build in Minecraft. I mean, if you need it for shelter, that's something, but it's probably not going to be something that you want to live in full time. However, with what Smallish Beans built here, it really is possible to make something prettier here. I mean, for one, there's not just one type of dirt. And the same way that we were using other blocks mixed in to get ourselves that wasteland before, we could use some of that to our advantage here if we wanted to add in more variation. But then, if you just use the right accent colors and actually give this a proper shape, from far away, it's hard to tell if this is dirt. It looks more like a clay or some other block that you're building out of. And the advent of mud blocks definitely shows that we can use those as well to get some pretty sweet looking designs. I mean, this was made 5 years ago in the original video, so there's a lot more brown bricks in Minecraft to use since then. In the past, we've shown off this build hack to make a simple looking stovetop inside of your kitchen. And while that still looks great in the newer updates, I think what we can see here in this user's post makes it look even better with adding in the copper trapdoors. For one, they cross over the hopper part of the minecart texture in such a way where it actually looks like a gas burner on a stovetop. And then by adding in some campfire smoke underneath to give that illusion of the particle effects, I think this ends up working just great in any kitchen you put it in. And considering we're not getting the frying pan from the April Fool's potato update anytime soon, I think this is more than fine to use if you want to. Diorite is not a popular block, and it's definitely not a popular block on Hermitcraft.
Look at him! Yes!
But Iscal just might have to live with this when you can see how good it looks in this example. Since here, using diorite together with bone blocks makes it look like old plaster that's being used on the walls. And I think that's really perfect, especially mixed together with something like this dark oak or spruce logs that we got here. And I think this idea in the comments also could be used to help out, using white concrete powder tucked in as well. That way you're adding a whole lot of texture to what would have just been a white wall. And I think that's just perfect, especially if it means that I have a use for diorite. Since the fact that we're not able to use the other stone types to make stone tools the way that we can with deep slate or blackstone, yeah, I think that's just embarrassing. They need some kind of help. In case you forgot to disable fire tick in your world, you're gonna want a fire escape for your build. I mean, after all, we're not the Disney Star Wars hotel. We should probably build one of ours with these. And what user Original Bubble did in their world, I think makes it look really nice. Now, if you wanted to blend in more with the brick side of your build, then you could just use one of the more weathered options of copper. But if you want it to pop out, maybe for safety reasons, then the full oxidized version stands out really nicely against the browns of the bricks. And I just really love how in in this example they're using the fences with the trapdoors on top of them for the stairs. If anything, it's maybe the first example I've seen of jungle wood actually being used well. But hey, if we're able to have the illusion of safety just to get past OSHA, that's fine by me. There's finally a use for magenta terracotta inside of your builds, since when you look at it just by itself, yeah, we can't sugarcoat it, it just looks bad. Directional textures can already be pretty tough to build with, but having a literal arrow, that's saying too much. But when you cover it up with purpur slabs like this, then you get a really pretty design peeking out of the back. And that's why we showed off something similar in our dream house video. It can look really pretty. Not bad for one of the ugliest blocks out there. Now with our new copper grates and frames, we can use this to make a particularly good looking gradient to use inside of our builds. And I for one am a big fan of this one where it goes from the orange of the copper into the blue of the skulk. Or being able to choose between having the blocks in the background all the way up to the cherry petals on top. There's a surprising amount of choice that you get to use here. And if anything, it's just a good reminder that it's not just the blocks that you're building with, but also the different layers of depth that you can add to your build. If you ask someone their favorite color, brown's rarely going to come up, which is probably why blocks like granite and podzol are considered to be a pretty ugly block. But as Jaredcraft shows off, if you use that to your advantage, you can get some really cool looking stuff. And I do think using this for landscaping actually goes a long way, since here we get a lot more subtle tones to use than just having regular dirt. Dirt and coarse dirt by themselves, not exactly pretty, but using it as the landscape for a wasteland like this, you get something pretty special. It's distinct enough from the mesa biome, but it's also not one note. I like it. Clearly, it's tough to build anything realistic in Minecraft, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try where we can. So for a start, let's take these hillsides and transform them into a classic grassy hill. See, since there's only grass on the top texture of our grass blocks, then a simple solution would be to take some moss and place it around the dirt parts of the hill like so. And that way, the distracting dark brown dirt gets replaced with a more complementing green. And while it's probably still too boxy to look realistic up close, if you zoom out, it's a marked improvement for sure. And it'll be worth trying at your next hillside cottage. You ever walked into a villager's house and thought they were really overdoing it just for a blast furnace? I mean, all of this decoration around it, that just seems excessive. And while I can't say that this solves it, I will say that we can add in one of our own. And so, by taking after this example to have our furnace on top of a crafter, then that lower crafter block looks like an oven. And if you got creative, probably using something like a debug stick would be the easiest way to do this. But when you blend it in with the stone bricks around the other sides of our furnace, the top and bottom parts of the crafter texture blend really well with the surrounding blocks. And honestly, even if you just put the blast furnace on top of something like this, it'd at least make a lot more sense for what you got all around it. At least then it's 2 usable blocks instead of just 1. Adding custom plants to your base can really improve a build just like that, though not everyone is looking to sink the time into building a custom tree. So why don't we start small and just improve your pumpkins and your jack-o'-lanterns? By throwing a sea pickle to the top of one of these, we can add a nice little stem to the picture. Or hey, candles could also do the same effect. And either option will definitely step up your game next Halloween. With all the new trapdoors that we got added into the game, that obviously means that we're gonna get a bunch of trapdoor-specific build hacks. And perhaps my favorite so far is particularly simple. All we have to do is just place down our chiseled copper blocks in all of our different tones, and then add a matching trapdoor on top of it. Then with a few buttons on the side, we've basically got industrial copper barrels to decorate your build with. And so if you're building something that's more on the radioactive side, I think this works particularly well. I mean, if anything, I'd much rather store toxic waste inside of one of these things instead of a barrel made of spruce. And better still, as this example shows off, if you want to build a bigger barrel, just simply take that 1x1 up to a 2x2. And then with even more buttons and trapdoors, it'll still look good at any scale. And if you don't go ahead and add in the lever on the side of the crafter, you'll notice that on the side of the texture, this here works particularly well as looking like a phone. So add it on top of a wall with a couple of trapdoors beside it, and we've basically got ourselves a payphone inside of our world. And for the final bits, you can add in a lever with an iron bar on top, finishing it off with a redstone torch for the antenna, and just an empty flower pot to decorate this part on the top. Giving you a good looking payphone, and I guess technically the crafter's still usable if you flip this lever. It just might not look as good as the payphone when you do that. You're sacrificing form for function, so choose which one's more important to you at the time. Structured void blocks don't get a lot of love in Minecraft, and really there's not too much that you can do with them. But by putting skulk veins on top of the block, then it's possible to get ourselves what happens to look like a block of skulk leaves. And as you can see by this example of a skulk vine tree, that can look really cool if you build these in the deep dark. Bridges are nothing new to Minecraft, but a rusty bridge, that's something fresh. Ironically so, I guess. With the help of the new mangrove roots, we can make these cool metal bridges to connect parts of your industrial base. And while I wouldn't suggest stepping on top of it without a tetanus shot, it does make for a new staple to a post-apocalyptic build. Not only do we have new armor trims to play around with, but we've also got new banner patterns. And once you've settled on all the different layers of banner patterns that you want to use, you can then take those custom banners, add them to the back of a trapdoor like this, and then finally with an armor stand tucked into place, it looks as if you got yourself an easel for an art class. And really what I love most about this original example is just the fact that they actually have a pineapple that they're drawing inside of the middle table. That's just too perfect. And with all the different designs that you can make for banner patterns, such as many of the ones that we've shown off in this video, there's a whole bunch of still life subjects to choose from. Pick your favorite and get ready to enroll in class. Why does this river look better than this one? Well, even though they're both filled with water, what's underneath that water makes all the difference. And as we can surely see here, if you use blue blocks in the lake bed, you get a much prettier, more vibrant body of water. So if you've got the cyan dye, I would opt for this instead of yet another muddy patch of dirt and clay. And with all those new paintings that we have to play around with, we can take this older build hack and give it a new twist. Since I love what this user did here to use the paintings as fake interiors, I mean, come on, it's simple math. More paintings equals more interiors. And what I will know that they did here particularly well is spacing out the painting from the actual window so that there's a lot more depth when you're looking at the build. Especially when someone's looking up at the top windows from the ground floor, it blends in particularly nicely, as opposed to just being yet another flat painting that you place too close to a window. Minecraft torches don't burn out, but we can make it look like they do. By simply using redstone torches instead, we can power these to make a really cool effect for your next mineshaft. And considering the only other way to get torches to burn out is to play on the April Fool's release of Minecraft 2.0, I'd say this is a step up, for sure. With the help of waterlogged stairs, we can make a rim of waterlogged like this, and then within that water, place in our copper grate blocks and add in a storm drain that you can use to line the sides of your streets. Though if you're gonna do this, I'd recommend showing it a little bit more oxidized. Call me a pessimist, but I'm not exactly sure that this much water flowing through a copper grate would keep it looking this nice all the time. But who knows, maybe it's an electrified current. In that case, I'm glad the water's getting drained. I don't want to step foot in it either. You might not expect it, but we're actually able to place down the heavy core that we find inside of the trial chambers, much in the same way that we're able to place mob heads in our world. And it's using that feature that you'll notice that when we place this on top of a wall, it fits perfectly in that space, giving us a great way to top our walls and decorate what would have just been any other shrine. And especially because of how well this blends in with the new tough walls that were added in this update too, I think that's all the more reason to experiment around with this. If you look at some of the more weathered variations of the copper blocks, you'll notice they work particularly well with bricks. And with that, we can take after this example and merge them into our walls to have a perfect looking window design inside of your brick house. Or if you want to, let it get fully oxidized and then you could just tuck it into your wooden builds like this. And while it is going to take an upfront cost of copper to get this going instead of just smelting up some sand, I think when the results look like this, it's worth considering for sure. Minecraft recently got a whole bunch of new paintings to play around with. And while a lot of those look great by themselves, it'll be taken after this user's advice that we can spice them up a bit. Since here with just a couple of stairs facing in different directions, they were able to make a perfect painting frame for the new painting. And considering a lot of the paintings are also really big, I think this does a great job of showing them off at scale. I mean, with this one that we have in this example, it almost looks like a window. And if you really wanted to, you could also make this into a secret entrance like we've shown off in the past. Really, plenty of possibilities for a pretty simple build hack. Coconut trees don't look like they're coming to Minecraft anytime soon, so Mojang might have suggested on their Minecraft feedback website. So if we're not going to see these in the next update, that's okay, because we're able to see them right now using decorated pots. And the genius part about this is by using undecorated decorated pots. Yeah, I know, that seems a little confusing, but stacking them together like this, you get a really convincing palm tree bark here. And then with a couple of dark oak wood blocks up here in the leaves, we get a really nice coconut tree to put in your tropical oasis. But be careful, considering the fact that pots are rendered differently inside of the render distance, you step far enough away, the leaves and other blocks will still render, but now you got a floating palm tree, which for an oasis might be a fun detail anyway. Now, obviously the crafter block is useful for, well, crafting, but it also has some great applications if you were to put this into your builds. And particularly what this user did inside of their kitchen is something that I love. Since if you look at the side of the texture for the crafter, you see that we can use the directionality of the block and make this handle look a lot more like the handle of a cabinet. And not only does that look great on your walls, but you can also place a 2x2 of these on your floor, add a carpet over top, and now you've got something of a kitchen island inside of your kitchen too. Which is good that these are easy to build with, because figuring out how to use them naturally is a little tough. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?